When you talk about underground hip-hop artists in a relatively normie environment, every single one of them is going to come out as a Suicide Boys copy or Young Lean inspired. Got Memphis-style beats? That's Suicide Boys. Got ambient melodies and or vocals drowned in reverb? That's Young Lean. All of this bullshit aside, there is one that I've never heard being compared to anyone else before, and that's SYBYR. SYBYR suffers from a severe case of what I like to call MF Doom syndrome, aka this dude has dropped so much music under so many goddamn aliases that it's super hard to keep track of. So just for the sake of this video, I'll be talking about SYBYR only. Most smaller artists try to follow a certain sound in the hopes of staying relevant or getting more listeners, but the man we are going to talk about today hasn't ever really done this. Well, maybe here a little bit, but we'll let that slide. It doesn't matter if you listen to SYBYR's older songs or newer ones, you still know they are SYBYR songs. This guy has been releasing music for years now, but he still has a distinct sound to the point that it's super rare. As some of you might know, I'm a rapper producer myself, and even I have made and released music that was at least to some point made in the hopes of staying relevant or trying to stay with the trends. But like I said, this is not the case with SYBYR. Sure, you can find some aspects in his music that are more or less inspired by something else, but this is how it is in music. I'm not going to argue that SYBYR is some celestial super being of originality. I mean, his whole discography is filled with trap drums and loud 808s, which is not exactly the epitome of originality. For fuck's sake, hip-hop is the #1 genre in the world and has been for a good while. But that is a whole other video. What I'm trying to tell you here is that SYBYR has done an amazing job at taking existing tools and using them to produce a soundscape that sounds unique, interesting, and otherworldly, and a sound in general that sticks out. And sticking out in the hip-hop field is not an easy task to do because of the aforementioned fact that hip-hop is the largest genre in the world. So what makes SYBYR stick out? Well, to put it simply, it really boils down to two things: vocals and sound selection. This is a very simple way of putting it, but don't worry, I'll explain what I mean. SYBYR has used a combination of autotune and distortion for most of his music ever since he even started using effects on his vocals. This is now a defining characteristic of SYBYR's music. The amount of distortion versus autotune varies from song to song though. Not every song needs the same amount of distortion, not every song needs the same amount of autotune. So how does this exactly apply to SYBYR? Every now and then SYBYR likes to do this thing where he raps while screaming like a psychotic golem trying to find his crystal meth plated ring of power, and if he won't find it, he will piss on your fucking email. Yeah, that was a quick example of how intense this stuff can sometimes get. I took this as an example because this is not the most common style of vocal for SYBYR. Here, you can hear that the distortion is very present and it complements the screamish vocals, while the autotune is nowhere to be found. And there's a reason for that. You don't fucking need it. It would not bring anything new to the track because, surprise, surprise, autotune doesn't work on non-tonal material. Okay, let's take it down a notch now though, and let's talk about the production. Like I said earlier, SYBYR's music is chock full of trap drums, which is a necessity considering that that's exactly the genre SYBYR has been going for all these years.
What kind of music would you say you make?
I make like experimental rap, I guess. Just otherworldly, I guess.
Experimental hip-hop that leans more to the trap side. Like I said, the usage of a defining element in a genre is not a matter of unoriginality, it's a necessity. Just like you can't make a movement shooter game without the extra mobility because it would just be another Call of Duty clone, you can't make a trap song without trap drums without it being a whole other genre. Now this is where it gets interesting. So let's play Philosophers for a few seconds. The starting track of SYBYR's this album is instrumental wise reversed, but if you reverse it back, it's still a trap beat. So is this still trap or is it bash? well, I would at least argue that it's still trap. Although the whole beat is reversed for the whole duration of the song, it's still made out of the same trap beat assets that we all love. Reversing a beat or elements of it for a short period is not a very uncommon effect in the trap world, or music in general these days. I can guarantee that if you've listened to trap for as long as I have, you've heard this effect multiple times. So we can say with comfort that a trap song that has this effect is still a trap song. So is it still a trap song if the effect just happens to last for the entire length of the song? I would say yes. By the way, if you want to hear a similar song but you like your music more polished, I would recommend listening to Kendrick Lamar's Lust. It's a good listen that even more furthers my argument that it's still the same genre despite the effect. In this case, Lust just has reversed drums for the entire length of the song. But I've never heard anyone say that it's not a hip-hop song just because the drums are reversed. Now that we're over this whole genre debacle, we are now approaching the line where genres don't exist and everything is just music made by SYBYR. But first, we need to talk about what makes a SYBYR beat a SYBYR beat. One thing SYBYR likes to use a lot is a modified saw wave, usually in the form of just a normal saw wave with a fast attack, a bit of decay, and a slow release. This is super simple from a sound design standpoint because most synthesizers have this kind of sound already as a preset, or you can just whip it out in a matter of seconds. In my opinion, the simplicity of the saw wave is genius. It's a very recognizable sound that most people have probably heard at least a few dozen times in their life. And that's because this sound dates back all the way back to the early days of synthesizers. So it can even trigger a nostalgic feel in some people. Now ain't that fucking neat? Speaking of neat, SYBYR has never been that. A big thing a trained ear will hear while listening to SYBYR is that his music is not professionally mixed. And that, to me at least, is part of the appeal. SYBYR's music feels raw and untempered with. This is why I try to never overproduce my own songs, because I want to channel that same feeling to my own listeners. That being one small thing that makes SYBYR SYBYR, here's a bigger one. Some of SYBYR's newer songs take on a more indie pop influenced instrumental while still sounding like SYBYR. This is due to the fact that what makes SYBYR beats was never the drums at all. Anyone can slap together a decent trap beat with the most used sounds and call it a day, but what really adds the meat to the bone with SYBYR's beats are the melodic instruments, like the saw wave I talked about earlier. This and everything else I've talked about in this video combined is why I think there will never be anyone else like SYBYR. The, in my humble opinion, very underrated, uncrowned king of the underground. Yo, you made it to the end of the video. Congratulations on that. So this was it. I would still have a lot to talk about SYBYR, but just for the sake of myself and this video, I had to cut it here, because otherwise this shit would be like an hour long, and I do not have the resilience for that shit. This was my first ever video essay, by the way, so I could really use some feedback in the comments down below. So if you want to do that, just go down there and feedback me. I'm gonna keep making this sort of like video essay videos for this channel in the future, so if you like this type of content, drop a like, consider subscribing. We're still a pretty small channel, so that would help out a ton. So thank you for watching. I've been Loki Wilden, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.